It takes a big man, a big, handsome, swarthy man to admit when he's wrong. I said as recently as late last week that I thought that there was still a chance, despite all reports to the contrary, that Biden would choose to stay in the 2024 race. And yesterday, Biden dropped out of the race. Now, in my defense, it looks like I was wrong. In my defense, there is still no proof that Biden knows that he has dropped out. It was the strangest dropping out imaginable. When LBJ declined to run for re-election in '68, he announced it from the Oval Office. With Biden, we haven't actually seen or heard from him. A staffer just posted an image of a letter supposedly written by Biden to Biden's social media channels, while Biden is locked away in his private home in Delaware in quarantine for a mild cold without much, if any, contact with anyone. But whether Joe knows it or not, he has been dropped out of the race. And we will get into what that means in a moment. But I don't want you to lose sight of the big story here. The big story is not that a senile man won't run to be president at 86 years old. The big story, the scary story, is the persistent power of the establishment media. We in the conservative and independent media like to flatter ourselves that the old establishment media has been eclipsed, rendered impotent by podcasts and live streams and tweets. But look at what the old guard did. 3 years ago, when Joe Biden was showing obvious signs of dementia, the establishment media lied and told everyone it was a childhood stutter, and Biden became president. Last month, the media criticized Biden for the first time ever, and within 3 weeks, Biden was no longer running for re-election. And the media didn't criticize Biden because they suddenly contracted some integrity. They did it because they felt that the entire liberal establishment stood to gain more by ditching him. Vice President Kamala Harris is now the presumptive Democrat nominee. And some Republicans are happy because no one likes her and she doesn't seem to know anything and she only has about 100 days to campaign. But if the media could make and break Joe Biden at will, Republicans would be crazy not to recognize that they might well pull it off again. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. Forget about the presidential race for a second, or forget about the people running in the presidential race. We also need to keep our eyes on this U.S. Secret Service story. The fact that the Secret Service director will not resign after she failed to secure President Trump and the man came within a quarter of an inch of his head being blown off, refusing to answer questions. Now, apparently, the Secret Service bureaucracy lying about whether or not there were requests for additional security from Trump. And we'll get into all of that in just a moment. First, make sure that your environment smells really lovely when you're listening to the show. Make sure it smells like a Sicilian summer over at thecandleclub.com. If you would prefer that your home smell like a 12th century monastery, you can also get the Wise Man candle, which is my favorite. We know Biden called it quits. The fight for America is still on. This election is pivotal. You need the truth now more than ever. That's where we come in. DailyWire gives you uncensored truth every day. DailyWire.com. Use code FIGHT for 47% off your annual membership. Join us as we fight the left and build the future. One last important thought before we get into Biden dropping out. And the thought is that you ought to check out Birch Gold. Text Knowles to 989898. Saudi Arabia recently ended its 50-year petrodollar deal with the U.S., which has the potential to weaken the U.S. dollar. Since 1974, Saudi Arabia has sold oil exclusively in U.S. dollars. This was huge for our global economic dominance. If there is less demand for the U.S. dollar, what happens to its value? It is for reasons like this that it is important to diversify some of your savings into gold, and you can do that with the help of Birch Gold. Right now, qualifying purchases by July 31st are eligible to get a one-of-a-kind limited edition Golden Truth Bomb. The only way to claim your eligibility is by texting Knowles, K-N-W-L-E-S, to 989898. Protect your savings by diversifying away from the U.S. dollar with gold. I have a decent portion of my portfolio in gold, and I'm glad to do. Text Knowles, K-N-W-L-E-S, to 989898. Birch Gold will help you convert an old IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold for no money out of pocket. Right now, qualifying purchases will get a limited edition Golden Truth Bomb. Text Knowles, KNWLES, to 989898. That is Knowles to 989898. He's out. Now, the media are largely responsible for this. However, I think we have to give a big round of applause to President Trump. This all began because Trump destroyed Biden in a debate. That was it. The debate exposed the media as having been liars. They lied about Biden's dementia. They lied about his fitness for office. That embarrassed them. It also exposed the whole game, so they had to try to move to replace him. And they took it so far that there was really no way for Biden to continue to run. It was this game of chicken where they were just destroying each other, and ultimately Biden blinked first. But it started with that debate. Trump won that debate so hard, so decisively, that his opponent, the sitting president of the United States, is no longer running for president. That's got to be a first in American history. That's very, very impressive. The liberal establishment took a gamble on that because Biden's poll numbers weren't that great. So Biden challenged Trump to the debate. He did so in a way that I think they all believed would lead Trump to either refuse or to try to negotiate on the terms, which seemed to be advantageous to Biden. But Trump didn't do that. He accepted the terms as they were. He called Biden's bluff, and then the gamble didn't pay off. So then they had to fly into overdrive and replace Biden, which is what they're doing. Biden did that through a letter. No evidence that he wrote a single syllable of this letter. No, there's no direct evidence that he even knows this letter went up. But the strangest part of the letter comes in paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president, and while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interests of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. Wait, what? He's acknowledging that he's not going to run for re-election. This is different from LBJ. It's not that he's going to drop out of the race because the numbers just aren't there or because Vietnam got a little too hot and it's hurt his standing in public opinion. He is not running for re-election because he's too old, because he's too senile, because he obviously has dementia. So if he's too senile and frail and demented to run for president, how is he fit to be president? Doesn't make any sense. The guy will stay in office, according to this letter, until January. Nobody thinks he's fit to be in office today. Nobody thought he was fit to be in office. No sensible people who were paying attention and honest with themselves thought he was fit to be in office 6 months ago, maybe 3 years ago. What? I'm not running because I'm demented, but I'm going to stay in office. Fit enough to be president, not fit enough to run. Doesn't make any sense at all. But this was probably the deal. The deal must have been, look, Joe, we're going to ramp up this pressure even more. So either if you continue to insist that you're going to run, maybe we'll just invoke the 25th Amendment. And then what? I don't know what else gets this guy out of office. He was clinging on as recently as days ago, insisting, I am running, I've got to finish the job. There was some stick, there was some carrot here. And that kind of deal would explain this absurdity that he gets to remain president if he admits that he's too senile to run for president. That doesn't make any sense as a matter of coherent position, but it does make sense as a political compromise between Biden and the Democrat establishment. There will be increasing pressure from Republicans in the coming days for Biden to resign. However, that won't matter. The liberal establishment doesn't care about that. This has always been a little lover's quarrel among between the media and Biden. But it's not that the media finally wanted to speak truth to power. It's that the media wants to advance the liberal cause, and they just felt that Biden used to be helpful for that purpose. Now he's no longer helpful for that purpose. Biden says he'll address the nation later this week. I guess whenever they get around to telling him that this happened. Immediately afterward, Biden endorses Kamala Harris. He says, my fellow Democrats, I've decided not to accept the nomination, focus all my energies on my duties as president for the remainder of my term. My very first decision as the party nominee in 2020 was to pick Kamala Harris. This is the best decision I've made. Today, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this. And there's a picture of Kamala laughing with her hand on Joe's back. Joe kind of looking confused but smiling, walking through the Rose Garden. It brings to mind that last scene of Mice and Men. You know, George and Letty go down to the pond. You ain't mad, Lenny? You ain't mad, George? No, I ain't mad, Lenny. I ain't never been mad. Now think of the rabbits, Lenny. Think of those rabbits. That's Kamala right there. Just think of the ice cream, Joe. No, it's okay, Joe. So now we have a presumptive Democrat nominee, Kamala Harris. Many people are not familiar with her. I've been following her career since she was an AG and senator from California, because, you know, I did live in California for some time. And I always thought, well, I'm being a big man and admitting I was wrong about Biden likely staying in the race. I did call from the beginning that this woman would go far in politics, not because she's popular, not because anyone wants to vote for her or anything like that, but she's very crafty. And she has made it now to become the Democrat nominee or presumptive Democrat nominee for president without ever having won a single vote in a primary that she was running in for president. That's pretty amazing. For those of you who are not as familiar with Kamala Harris, here's just a little overview.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been. You know?
What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What we can see, what we believe can be, unburdened by what has been. Here's the thing. Who doesn't love a yellow school bus, right? Can you raise your hand if you love a yellow school bus, right? Just, there's something about and most of us, many of us went to school on the yellow school bus, right? What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
She is wearing a blue suit. That's right. There's so much more from Kamala Harris that you can dive into, though it's pretty much just more of that. You've now heard basically everything Kamala Harris has ever said. Biden had to endorse her. She's his vice president. This is an unusual situation. And the Democrats love the identity politics. She's at least partially black. She's actually half Indian, Tamil Indian, and then she's Afro-Jamaican, so a little black, a little bit of white. But in the calculus of the Democrats, that makes her black. That makes her pretty much Malcolm X. So she is a black woman. She ranks very high on the intersectional hierarchy, and so Biden had to pick her. Much of the Democrat establishment has leapt on, but there are some big players in the Dem establishment who are not fully on board with Kamala yet. We'll get to that in 1 second. First, though, you need to imagine what can be unburdened by the debt that has been. That's why you got to check out American Financing. Go to AmericanFinancing.net. You work hard to support yourself and your family, but it might seem as though you are taking a step back instead of moving forward. When the bills are higher than what you bring in every month, you have to swipe that credit card to cover the difference. If you own a home, my friends at American Financing can help you break free from that cycle. American Financing is saving people an average of $854 a month. Think about what you could do with an extra $800 every month without having to worry about those minimum monthly payments. All it takes is a quick call to American Financing. If you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. Call American Financing today. Start your journey toward being credit card debt free. 800-685-5696. That is 800-685-5696, or visit AmericanFinancing.net. Do not allow yourself to be racked with anxiety by your credit card debt anymore. AmericanFinancing.net, NMLS 182334, NMLSConsumerAccess.org. The Clintons have endorsed Kamala Harris, which means that we're not going to have to deal with Hillary running again. It means we don't get to deal with Hillary running again. That would have been great, but it's not happening. They've endorsed Kamala. The Congressional Black Caucus, which is very popular and powerful, has endorsed Kamala. Some big donors have. A number of other legislators, members of Congress, super PACs have endorsed Kamala. Gavin Newsom finally endorsed Kamala. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who clearly wanted to be president and still wants to be president, he tweeted out when Biden said he was stepping down, he said, "This is great, Biden, you're great, you're a wonderful man, this is so wonderful." And then 6 hours later, he endorsed Kamala. Don't forget, Biden says, "I'm stepping down," and then almost immediately afterwards says, "I'm endorsing Kamala." Can you imagine those 6 hours for Gavin Newsom? Can you imagine the amount of scheming and calculating and deal-making he must have gone through during those 6 hours? But eventually he got on board. Jared Polis, Colorado governor, Roy Cooper, North Carolina governor, Josh Shapiro, who's being discussed as a potential running mate to Kamala, Pennsylvania governor, he got on board. Number of senators, number of congressmen. Okay. As of this morning, Pelosi was not yet on board. Schumer was not yet on board. The Obamas were not yet on board. Now, again, this could change as I'm speaking during this show. This is obviously a very fluid situation. The fact that the Obamas did not immediately endorse Kamala does raise the question about what I always felt was a fantasy and a fever dream, that Michelle Obama could step in. You heard this from a lot of political nerds and fan fiction authors. They said, "Oh, but actually what could happen? Biden gets out, and it's not Kamala. They pay Kamala to go away, and Michelle Obama steps in." And I thought, I don't really buy that. I don't think Michelle Obama wants to be president. I don't think she's particularly popular. Her husband was popular. She doesn't really have that. She infamously said the first time she was ever proud of her country was when it elected her husband. She doesn't have that gift that her husband has. However, I've been somewhat wrong before. The political situation has gotten crazier than many expected. So the fact that the Obamas didn't come out right away, does make you wonder. There was then a rumor started by Joe Manchin that Joe Manchin, the somewhat moderate senator from West Virginia, was going to challenge Kamala Harris for the nomination. Within about 12 hours, he came out and he said, "Nah, I don't need that in my life. I'm not doing it. Ain't me. I wish there were a moderate or a centrist running, but it ain't going to be me. I'm out." So the way is clear now for nominee Kamala Harris. And how are the media treating Biden? Don't forget, the media were treating Biden as a great orator, a man who he suffered from a childhood stutter. That's the only reason he was having any trouble on the campaign trail in 2020. But a great man, a noble man, a devout Catholic. Remember, you always heard about his devotion to Catholicism, specifically when he was endorsing abortion and crazy sex stuff and mutilating little kids. And that's when you especially heard about his devotion to Catholicism, despite his contradiction of certain basic principles, non-negotiables. Then, over the past few weeks, the media have said Biden's an old demented coot and he's got to get out of the race. Now, however, they're back to liking Biden. He's a man, according to my doppelganger, who made a great sacrifice for this country.
I cannot see anywhere in his personality where this decision today was possible. This is the opposite of something that is natural or easy for him. He is just not built to do something like this because his superpower is being underestimated. And that's why he's been so resolute in resisting all these calls for him to drop out. But him making this decision today is to give the country a chance. I'm just blown away by the sacrifice and the patriotism that this moment embodies.
The sacrifice and the patriotism. So I love Rachel's opening remarks. She says, I can't believe he would do this. This is so unlike him. This is something that he would never do in a million years. This isn't him at all. I've known Biden for a long time, and this doesn't seem like him at all. Yeah, kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Because we haven't seen him, and we haven't actually heard from him. And this is totally unlike him, and it contradicts what he's been saying for weeks up until just a few days ago. Yeah, kind of makes you wonder. Has anyone told Biden? Is Biden okay? Has anyone checked in at Rehoboth Beach? Anybody? I don't know. But then, let's say Biden does know, or even if he doesn't, he has been dropped out of the race. Then she says, this is a great sacrifice. And I heard this yesterday. Right when the news broke, I was driving to the DailyWire studios to broadcast. And I said, all right, let me check in on the news networks. It's going to be really funny to watch them do a total 180. And that's exactly what happened. There was one guy who came on CBS. I didn't catch his name. He said, it's so fitting that Biden's career is ending with this sacrifice because it began with a sacrifice. You know, Joe Biden only ran for president in 2020. He didn't want to run. He only ran because Trump called Nazis fine people at Charlottesville. Never happened. Even Snopes and the left-wing outlets are beginning to admit that. He only ran as a sacrifice to save American democracy. He didn't want to be president. Bro, the guy has been running for president pretty much incessantly since 1988. The guy got elected to the U.S. Senate before he was constitutionally old enough to serve. The guy has been dreaming about being president since he was in the womb. He then finally gets to be president at age 152. And when it's clear that he can't even speak anymore, the one skill that is required of a politician, he still refuses to go. He says, no, he's not going. The media had to threaten him, had to humiliate him. And then finally, someone posted a statement for him. We're still not even sure that it was Biden who did it. No, he didn't give it up voluntarily. What are you talking about? Some sacrifice. This is all he's ever wanted in life. And he finally got it, and he had it ripped away from him, and it was humiliating. Some people are saying they feel bad for Biden. I don't feel bad for Biden because his career is ending in this humiliating way. I find him to be a pretty nasty man and a liar and just a disreputable person in his public comportment. So I don't feel bad for him for that reason. I do pity him, however. And I pity Joe Biden in as much as he did sacrifice the things that might have given him a good life, up to and especially his faith, in order to have a 54-year political career in which he accomplished basically nothing. Nothing would justify giving up the things that actually make a good life, and especially one's faith. Nothing. You know, you could win the whole world. It's not worth it. But it seems especially brutal to give up the things that might have given this man a good life in order to have this more than half-century long political career in which he really didn't do much of anything. He was many things. He has been many impressive things for many years, starting with a U.S. senator back in the 1970s. And then, you know, he led committees. He was the vice president of the United States, and he became the president. So it's impressive that he was those things. What did he do? What can he point to having done during all that time? Even if you're an ardent Biden defender, if any of those exist, could even his most vociferous supporters point to an accomplishment? It's just he gave up the things that might have given him a good life, including his faith, which he has regularly contradicted. When his faith came into conflict with his political ambitions, he chose the political ambitions every single time. And then he did nothing. He got nothing for it. That genuinely is pitiable. So, you know, Biden finally realized that, all good things and bad things, and, well, all things generally must come to an end. Your chance to get a Daily Wire Plus annual membership for 47% off is still here. It will come to an end at some point, but it's still here. The DW exists to bring you uncensored truth. We can't do it without your support. DailyWire.com. Use code FIGHT for 47% off your annual membership. Join us now as we fight the left and build the future. DailyWire.com. Code FIGHT. 47% off annual memberships. Become a member right this very second. Now, turning to President Trump, you know, the attack on Trump from the Democrats from the beginning of this campaign, really from the beginning of 2020, was that he is a threat to democracy. Trump recently addressed this argument days after having almost been murdered.
When Biden says, we have to stop MAGA, we will stop MAGA, I said, he doesn't know what MAGA stands for. It stands for Make America Great Again. How can you be against that? How can you be against that? And you know, the other side's going around trying to make me sound extreme, like I'm an extremist. I'm not. I'm a person with great common sense. I'm not an extremist at all. But what they do is misinformation and disinformation, and they keep saying, he's a threat to democracy. I'm saying, what the hell did I do for democracy? Last week, I took a bullet for democracy. What did I do against democracy? Crazy.
Great line. Great line. And he even, wow, this guy, what a tough guy. He even grabs his ear after that. In a way that's not, he's not being dramatic about it. He's making a joke, actually. He said, I'm a threat to democracy. I took a bullet for democracy. You guys, you Democrats, have been as undemocratic as it can be. You tried to kick me off the ballot so people couldn't vote for me because I'm too popular. Then you tried to throw me in jail so people couldn't vote for me. I'm too popular. And then someone, after y'all called me a threat to democracy for years and years, and you called me the second coming of Hitler for years and years, what do you know? Someone came out and tried to murder me, and I survived that too. I took a bullet for democracy. Quite right. Now, contrast that with Kamala Harris. Kamala, the presumptive Democrat nominee, dropped out of the 2020 presidential election before the primaries. She's never won a single vote while running in a primary. All of a sudden, she's going to be the Democrat nominee after the 2024 primaries, where everyone voted for Biden. The establishment media and the elites kick Biden out, replace him with Kamala Harris, whom no one has voted for while she was running for president. Seems very undemocratic. Doesn't look good. But this is some of the brilliance of putting Kamala Harris in the spot. All of a sudden, the Democrats don't need to run on the threat to democracy line anymore. I'm sure they'll still bring it up. They're so used to it. It's in their muscle memory at this point. But the threat to democracy line became a liability because when the libs have said that Trump poses an existential threat to democracy, that justifies an assassination. When the Democrats say Trump is Hitler, that is to justify assassination. If you disagree with me, then what you're saying is you don't think we should assassinate Hitler. You don't think that if someone poses an existential threat to your whole country, that would justify stopping that person by any means necessary. But of course, that the Democrats do believe that they should kill Hitler. They do believe that we should kill an existential threat to democracy. That's why they use that line. That's why it's very awkward for them now, because someone took them up on their premise and they appear responsible for having established the political conditions that would justify an assassination. So they can't run quite so hard on this line. You even heard reporters asking Karine Jean-Pierre this, the White House press secretary, and she had to dance around whether or not the Democrats would keep calling him a threat to democracy, especially now that their nominee is someone who has ascended to the position through the least democratic means possible. The line's not going to work as well. So what the Democrats can do, now that they have a woman who's, I think, 59 years old, is they can just use the Republican attacks on Biden's age against Trump. They've already signaled that that's exactly what they're going to do. And the media will cover for them. It's totally hypocritical. It's a complete flip. Democrats have been saying for years now, age should not be an issue in this campaign. And in any case, Trump is much more energetic, not only than Biden, but than Kamala Harris for that matter. And they're going to totally flip, and the media still have a tremendous amount of power. And they might get away with it. Now, speaking of people stepping down, or people who should step down, the director of the U.S. Secret Service is somehow still in her job now, more than a week, 8 days after the very nearly successful assassination of President Donald Trump. A sort of security failure by the U.S. Secret Service that we have not seen in a very long time, I guess not since Kennedy. And I was at the RNC last week, as were many Republicans, as was the Secret Service director, and a number of not just hoi polloi Republicans, but we're talking about prominent Republicans, U.S. senators. My U.S. Senator, Marsha Blackburn, followed the Secret Service director around demanding her resignation.
This is exactly what you were doing today on the call.
This was an assassination attempt. You owe the people answers. You owe President Trump answers.
She just walks away, that Secret Service director. She doesn't want to talk to U.S. senators. She doesn't answer to them. You heard Marcia there. You owe the people an apology. She should resign. Absolutely. It is a scandal that this woman is. If all we knew about the assassination attempt was that there was a security failure and Trump came within a quarter of an inch of being murdered, that woman needs to resign. That woman who came out there, she said, "Oh, the buck stops with me. I'm responsible, but I'm not going to resign and nothing's going to change. Give me a break." That if that's all we knew. However, now we are beginning to see evidence of a cover-up because there were rumors that started to spread shortly after the assassination attempt that the Trump campaign had asked for additional security and had been denied additional security by the Secret Service. Then we were told this is totally fake news. The U.S. Secret Service came out, said this is not true. Here you have it. The assertion that a member of the former president's security team requested additional security resources that the U.S. Secret Service or the Department of Homeland Security rebuffed is absolutely false, says Anthony Guglielmi, a spokesman for the Secret Service. That was in a statement on the day after the shooting. But here, according to the Washington Post, after receiving detailed questions from the Washington Post, Guglielmi said the agency had learned new information, indicating the agency's headquarters may have, in fact, denied some requests for additional security from Trump's detail and was reviewing documentation to understand the specific interactions better. Excuse me? And this is specifically for Trump events. This is not that they asked for a few more guys at Mar-a-Lago. Headline from WAPO. Secret Service said to have denied requests for more security at Trump events. Now the Secret Service is acknowledging that after having lied about it a day after the assassination attempt. I have spoken about the attempted assassination, the bizarre, very nearly successful, only unsuccessful by the grace of God, assassination of Donald Trump. I've spoken about it in rather measured terms. I only want to give the facts, things that we know for certain. I don't want to speculate too far. This is too serious an event to let speculation run away. Now we know for a fact the Secret Service lied. We know for a fact that the Trump security detail requested additional security. This is a man, he is both the most popular and probably the most hated man in the world. This is a man who has been maligned and defamed by the establishment as Hitlerian and an existential threat to democracy. This is a man, even beyond the wackos in America trying to murder him, who has had assassination attempts by Iran, by foreign actors. This is a man who is in more danger, physical danger at any given time than anyone else on earth. And his security detail requests additional resources. And the Secret Service or the Department of Homeland Security, this woman, say no. That's pretty weird. Just in itself. If Trump needs additional security, he shouldn't even have to ask, okay? He should maybe mention it offhand and there should be an army of agents who show up to his house. This guy is in serious danger. He's a former president. He's the leading presidential candidate in 2024. The fact that it would be denied is completely insane. I'm trying to think of an explanation for it. I can't. Well, I can think of some explanations, but I'd prefer not to articulate them. Then you get the Secret Service lying about it. And then the Washington Post of all places, you get the media ask a pointed question, and then the Secret Service have to admit that they lied. Yikes. This is beginning to look not merely like a catastrophic security failure. We are now beginning to see what looks like a cover-up. Very strange. Very, very strange. On top of that, America First Legal has submitted FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, for information on Secret Service staffing around Trump. The Secret Service has denied those FOIA requests. I'm all for explanations from incompetence. Okay, there's enough incompetence in the government to go around. This is beginning to look real crooked. And it could be that the Secret Service is now crookedly trying to cover up for its gross incompetence. It could be that. But it might not be that. It might just be that the kinds of people who have been calling Trump an existential threat to democracy and a Nazi for 8 years, well, they might just not want to give him extra security. I'm not saying they need to go sit and conspire with someone to blow his head off or anything, but they might just not be inclined to give him extra security, especially when he seems to be polling much better than the incumbent president, whose executive branch runs the Department of Homeland Security and the Secret Service. A lot of answers. The first thing that needs to happen is this woman, Kimberly Cheadle, the head of the Secret Service, needs to resign. Every second she's in there, the Biden administration looks complicit in the attempted murder of his rival. She needs to resign. But then, that's the beginning. That's not the end. That's the beginning. Then we need this woman to answer a lot of questions. We need a very thorough investigation, and we need people to be held accountable. The more that comes out, the worse this looks. And we are getting some information now, reported by the New York Post, on what the would-be assassin of President Trump was doing just before he committed his crimes. And we'll get to that in 1 second. First, though, my favorite comment on Friday is from TT Fresh, who says, Biden will be livid when he hears about this. Well, I guess this was probably a comment on my live stream yesterday because with this political cycle, I now live at the DailyWire studio and I just broadcast all the time. I'm basically the star of a reality show now, as is everyone who is even remotely connected to politics or media, because this is the craziest election cycle since at least 1968, maybe further back. Yes, Biden will be livid. He will be livid when he finds out that he has dropped out of the presidential race. New York Post has a gross report out. The Trump shooter, the would-be assassin, they cracked into his phone and they found out that this guy's last online search was for... Checks out. That checks out. I'm not surprised about that at all. This is a guy who's about to go successfully murder one person, critically injure 2 other people, and nearly blow the head off the president, but for a 15, 20-degree turn of his head at the very last second, nanosecond before he pulled the trigger. And the thing he does right before, he must know he's going there to die. There's no way he's going to get out of this alive. The last thing he does is look up. Yeah, checks out. I don't think the last thing that he did would be to bake a pie for the old lady down the street. I don't think the last thing he did would be to donate to the poor. Of course, the last thing that this guy is going to do is going to be something sinful. And it underscores, forget about, we've been talking about the assassination for a very long time, or the near assassination for a very long time. Just focus on this for a second. Focus on the thing he does right before he goes out to kill people. It is no exaggeration. There's not 1 ounce of hyperbole to say is one of the biggest problems, political problems in America. It is one of the gravest, most dangerous, most urgent political problems in America. And the reason for that is it is ubiquitous. Something like, 90% of men look at this stuff, probably more than 90%. And the median age of first exposure is something like 11 years old. It's probably even younger now. I think that's an outdated number. And a huge number of women are looking at it too. So it's ubiquitous, but plenty of drinking water is ubiquitous too. That's perfectly fine. It's ubiquitous, and it radically warps people's minds to worship idols and to view other human beings as objects. That's what it does. There's this thing out there, the thing that the would-be assassin, the successful murderer, did right before he went out to kill people, is something that the vast majority of people do regularly. And it's a thing that specifically perverts your mind. It turns you into a pervert or more of a pervert. And the way that it perverts you is by altering your vision and desires to view human beings not as proper subjects, but as objects for your gratification. It just gets worse the more you consider the problem. When you look at from a spiritual perspective, you are worshiping demons. Okay, I know for people who are not religious or who are materialists or atheists or whatever, that's going to sound foreign to them because they don't engage with metaphysical reality, or they do. We all have to engage with metaphysical reality in some ways because we're a body and soul combined. But some people are not conscious of that, or they try to deny it or whatever. But that is what you're doing. It is a religious ritual whereby you worship demons. At the very least, we would have to say you're worshiping idols. It's a glittering image on a screen, and idolatry is just when you value a created good as its own end, more than the creator, outside of its proper place. That's what idolatry is. So when you take, if you worship money, you're making an idol out of money. And it's not that money's bad. It's good to keep a roof over your head. It's good to provide food for your family. But if you worship money, if you make money the end of your desires, you're going to have a bad time. You're going to have a bad life. Same thing's true of food. Same thing's true of sex. These are not things that are bad in themselves. And sex, obviously, is not a bad thing in itself. But when you pervert it, when you take it out of its proper context and out of its natural end, and you distort it now so that sex becomes just glittering images on a screen somewhere where you do all sorts of gross things, that is an idolatry, and it's ubiquitous, and their results can't be good. Do you know anyone who's ever gotten better, who's ever become a better person for looking at? No. We all acknowledge it's bad. Other than, I guess, the addicts who deep down probably do know that it's bad. We have tried multiple times in recent American history to fix this problem, Democrats and Republicans. The Communications Decency Act, the Child Online Protection Act, the prosecutions of obscenity. And it often gets stymied by the courts, and there are all these kind of crazy lib free speech arguments about it, but it's really, really bad. It's the kind of thing that would-be assassins look at before they murder people, okay? It's not the kind of thing that missionaries or humanitarians or charitable people look at before they go help others. It's a very selfish thing, and we need to deal with it as a political problem, or it's going to continue to fester. Now, speaking of demons and warping people's brains, the show really took a turn. There's a story out. It's a science story, so even the secularists could probably appreciate this. There's a story out from NPR. It shows that a neuroscientist took psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, and then he watched his brain fall apart. NPR's words, not mine. This weirdo scientist takes the mushrooms and then sticks his head into an MRI machine and watches what happens, and he saw his brain fall apart. So he's still open to magic mushrooms, but they're saying, look, it obviously has these really serious effects on the brain. And so how could it be used for good? Is there any good use of this? Here's what NPR is writing. A patient with addiction, for example, might be able to reframe their relationship with substances in the days and weeks following a dose of psilocybin, he says, because it's rewiring your brain and making things fall apart. But the approach has risks, says Dr. Ginger Nickel, a psychiatrist at Washington University whose husband was in the study and took psilocybin twice. He had an almost religious experience the first time, she says. The second time he saw demons. What? Yeah, he had an almost religious experience the first time. Second time he saw demons. Even so, psychedelics may offer a way to help psychiatric patients. I love it. It follows, he saw demons. Even so, put the demons aside for a second. It can offer help psychiatric patients recognize their own capacity to change. It takes years to figure that out in therapy, she says. This gives us a different way of thinking about learning and recovery. And, you might accidentally run into some demons, but, hey, can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. As a general rule, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a psychiatrist, not a neurosurgeon, right? As a general rule, I try to avoid things that will lead me to see demons. I think that's basically good advice for everyone. If a thing you're doing leads you to seeing demons and interacting with demons, turn around. Go the other direction. But it's so tempting, right? Because what they're saying here, what the scientists are saying here is you might be able to skip years of therapy. It might help you get over certain other problems you've got. Yeah, man. Oh, these people. Oh, these scientists. Illiterate shepherds in the ancient Middle East understood much better than these scientists the things the scientists are trying to articulate. Yeah, demons tempt you. Yes, sin is tempting. You're often tempted to take shortcuts around the hard work that is required in cooperation with God's grace to grow in virtue and sanctity. Yeah, yes, that's true. You could take you could be tempted by a shortcut, but the shortcut might not work, and it might just leave you hanging out with demons, and that's probably not a good idea. Amazing how the more we learn about science, the more science progresses, the more we realize that the gods of the copybook headings return. You know, the more we realize that the things that we've always kind of known to be true, they're actually basically still true. Pretty much all of them. But no, that's cool. At least maybe you can smoke a little less pot or something by doing harder drugs and seeing demons. Okay, doesn't sound like a good deal to me. It's Music Monday. The rest of the show continues now. You don't want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, Knowles at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.